Welcome to Finding Contentment, the official podcast of the American Institute of Stress. The goal of this podcast is to explore the science, psychology, and practical wisdom that can help us manage our stress. If you are looking for personal growth and professional success, or just want a more fulfilling life, visit us at stress.org. And now here is the host and executive director of the American Institute of Stress, Will Heckman.
Hey, greetings, everyone. This is your host and executive director for the American Institute of Stress. Hey, it's Will Heckman. Thank you again for joining us. I'd like to ask all of you who are listening to this podcast to please go to stress.org and remember to subscribe to our magazines. We just had Contentment come out. We have some great articles there. You all should read them. And if you're watching this, you know what I'm going to ask. Yeah, please hit the like button. Make sure to subscribe. It helps grow our channel. And today, we're going to be talking about family traditions and how they can help us reduce stress. Our guest today is Linda Penkala, who recently wrote an article in that issue of Contentment magazine, which again, stress.org, where she stated, as a tightly woven unit or loosely gathered group of relatives, the family is our foundational place for lessons to be learned and where loving relationships begin. The stability of parents, grandparents, and extended family offers a solid ground of stability and connections. Well said. Lynn Penkala is an LMT and her company Optimum Health for Life, a wellness company that offers health and wellness presentations, whether virtually or in person, and therapeutic massage, incorporating aromatherapy, light therapy, and Thai massage. Her passion and heart for holistic lifestyle choices can be found through published articles on her website, which I'm going to put below. It's lindapenkala.com, but also in Linda's book, The Pause to Relax, Ladies for Robust Health. It's blending her first career as a jockey and her current one as an LMT for 37 years. It reveals powerful analogies regarding speed, stress, and the result of not paying attention to making proactive lifestyle choices to prevent cardiovascular disease. It's our number one killer. Linda's holistic self-regulation modalities help lessen stress, enhance clarity through breath work, and help people find a peaceful work-life balance. So please help join me in welcoming my friend Linda Penkala. Hi, Linda.
Hey, Will. Great to be with you once again.
It's great having you here. I loved your article. I thought it was really good, and obviously, I love that I asked you to speak to me today on the podcast. You know, we're talking at a time where there's a lot of holidays coming up. We're recording this in November, and we got Thanksgiving and all the holidays through December and New Year's. And you talked about the role of family traditions and how they play in managing stress during difficult times. How do they do that?
Well, it's really important to realize that all of these that I'm going to say it's all about intention, Will. And it's all about someone within the family or a group of family members saying, you know, this is important and we need to gather, whether it's around a table or go on a trip or go for a walk, regardless, we need to come together. And so what I like to say is there offer hopeful family remedies to stress. And some of the things that I mentioned in the article were trips. And that's what we did as parents. Joe and I have 4 kids. Like one time we went to Maine with 4 teenagers, 3 boys and 1 girl, and my mom drove separately. And so that was an adventure. It was just an incredible adventure. And what these trips would do is give these kids memories years later. And as a family group, sometimes we'll laugh about the time that, you know, 2 of my boys got lost on the mountain. We had moose and bear, and we were down there playing games. The next thing we know, you know, the boys were gone. So we just prayed that they'd come back. And of course they did, but it was dark. And so, you know, you have these memories that make you laugh down the road, but, you know, it's just a good way to just come together and solidify, who you are and whose you are together as a family, whether you're in the car or you're walking through the woods or on a beach.
I agree with that 100%. In fact, my family went to Maine too one year with a couple of teenagers who were both photographers, and you're right, it does create a lot of memories for them. But you know what? It also created memories for me
Right.
and for my wife, and we thought it was great doing that trip. Um, and while they didn't get lost, and yeah, there are a lot of bear and moose. Although we searched for moose and we couldn't find one, um, it does create a lot of positive memories and a lot of good things go on. So share a different family tradition that's helped you and others sort of stay grounded during stressful moments, including some of those holidays and those trips and those things. Um, is there something you do as a family traditionally that helps you do that?
Yeah, so the word grounding is powerful because that means we're kind of being grounded to the earth. And we are kind of like that because I love the earth, I love nature. And so we are outside a lot. Well, here in Maryland, we go through all the beautiful seasons. And so we do like to be out in the pool. We have a pool right here, above ground pool. We have a place to play a little soccer game up front in the front of the house. We could kick a soccer ball. We could throw a football, do frisbee. So we like to be outside a lot. And so we do have some family traditions. So say we have a crab feast because my son Lance is born on July 4th. So we try to always have a crab feast around that. It could be maybe the weekend before, maybe the weekend after, but that's important to gather around. And then everyone in their mindset remembers, oh yeah, it's July 4th, Lance's birthday, and we're going to gather and eat crabs. And we just sit out there and eat crabs forever. And we jump in the pool when you get hot, and you pick crabs for my mom because she doesn't like picking them. And we had to dip them in water first because she didn't like bay seasoning, but it's all good, you give somebody what they need and they want. But things like that give kids, my 6 grandkids, something also to look forward to. You're teaching them how to pick a crab, how to get out that beautiful meat, and then just have fun. And just, I think it's those 4 F's: fun, faith, family, and having a feast together that brings people's connections, connectivity, and also clarity of, like it's important to get together and to remember that.
Do you think that, okay, so obviously you did this with your family, with your kids, and your parents are there.
Hmm.
That's how it becomes a family tradition. You pass it now, your kids will start doing it and keep it
Hmm.
going for maybe another
Hmm.
generations.
Hmm.
And I always thought like something that, one of the best things about something like that is telling my kid, this is what your grandfather did. This is
Right,
what I did. And now you're doing it and
right.
you're teaching that on. That's a real grounding moment,
Yeah,
you
you,
know.
you can't learn that in school. You can't read
No.
it in a book. And I do that with, say, recipes or making DIY projects with the grandkids, is I want to pass on the fact that we could be up there in the kitchen. They could be on standing, if they're real small, on a dining room chair to get to the counter to mix something with me, like to make, I mentioned banana bread or even lasagna. I love to make lasagna because you get your hands all in there, layer it, and you teach them how to do that. And you make a mess, but that's all good. That's fun too. They'll remember that too, right?
Yep, they sure will. It's funny because it doesn't have to be that big a deal. It doesn't
No.
have to be like you just the cooking itself um it creates a tradition. In my house it's art and crafts.
Hmm.
My that I'm a craftsman on the side, and my daughter, since she's very young, has always been there with me working on wood and stuff like that. So that connection, and now she does it on her own, it also forms a tradition. And those are great times to relieve stress. You're actually teaching the next generation a stress reliever.
Right. And one Christmas, no, it was Thanksgiving a couple of years ago, my young grandkids said, Gma, can we make jewelry? And kind of caught me off guard. I was like, oh, yeah, of course. I mean, you never say no. So I go back there and I get my really big trays of gemstones. And some of them
Right.
are really nice gemstones, and some aren't. And so we opened the three of them right there where the whole family was sitting in the living room, and we watched the girls make them, and they each made one for their moms. And I said to mom, which gemstone would you like? And so that was fun, just watching them play, create, and you have to measure it around the wrist, and you have to do a few different things to seal the deal. And then I use the final glue at the end that smells really bad to seal the knot.
My daughter also makes jewelry. I understand, but it's very similar to some of my friends who are fishermen and
Yeah.
taught their kids, boys and girls, how to fish here down here in Florida. And just like doing that, when you're making that jewelry or you're out there fishing, that's all you think about.
Right.
You're not really stressed out. It's a great stress reliever.
I like to
And
say that you unplug from the world.
yeah,
So you're so present. The whole presenteeism and mindfulness during COVID was really front and center because we were so wrapped up in watching all the things going on TV and everything that we forgot where we were and really to be present, to be mindful. And when we are in these family moments, whatever we're doing, is we're truly unplugging well, and that's the most important component.
I couldn't agree more. You also wrote in your last article about incorporating hope into
Yeah.
family rituals, and you mentioned it a little bit before. I wanted to ask you what you meant by that and how it impacts the collective resilience of our families.
Well, I think about it as it gives you structure. It's kind of like the pillars of a building. It gives you structure to have the capacity to have hope, but also to have a conversation about hope with your kids, grandkids, with your family at large, and say, how can we move forward in this crazy world and not be sucked into it, if you will, and that we have our family solutions. And mine will be totally different from all of your listeners that are listening right now. And so say it, some of them are just to go to a cemetery for a ritual. So when I was a kid, my mom and dad, after Easter church, we would take flowers to their mothers or fathers' gravestones, whether it was Queens or Brooklyn. And that was one of the things that we just did. We didn't, and then we didn't question why are we going there. When we stood there and found the headstone, we asked questions about Grandma Marie or Grandma Bessie, and we had that connection when we were kids to honor them. And now, even when my mom was going through her dementia moments, one of the things I did with her was the tradition I had with her was we would be driving down the road. I'd hold her hand and I'd say, Mom, tell me a story about, to jog her memory. And I wanted to know how it was when you and Dad went to get married, and her
Right.
parents didn't like the fact that my dad had dark skin. He was Filipino and my mom was white and Irish Scottish. So, it was that whole black white thing and what they had to go through during that time. But love in the end
Wins
persevered.
out.
Yeah. Yeah.
It it wins out. Yeah,
It
and it
wins
was a
out.
different time. You're right. I mean, you get to share those stories with your mom, and that does sort of bring hope and resilience to your family. I mean, it's looking forward. I like that. So tell me, you've done a lot of things. We can't go into all of them because this is only have a certain amount of time. But you've
Right,
been
right.
massage therapist, you've done aromatherapy and things like that, and you and I have talked about you being able to calm a horse with massage therapy, which is phenomenal.
Hmm.
But I wanted to ask you, and because you have such a unique perspective on it, are some simple low stress traditions that family can start? Like if we have young families that that listen and watch this, and what can they do to start help reduce the anxiety and create a sense of calm in that family? That's not always an easy thing to do.
No, it's not, but it begins probably with the woman, the mother, is to prioritize. So you have to prioritize one-on-one time, and you have to put that in your calendar, Google Calendar, book, whatever you want to call it. But you have to prioritize and say months in advance or next week, and you have to always be looking ahead. As a business owner, I'm always looking not at this quarter, but at 3 quarters or next year where I want to be as a business. So we're always looking forward, and you have to kind of run your family kind of like a business that way, in that you're always looking forward. How can I prioritize time or go to this apple picking festival next month with all the cousins together and look forward? So you look in your community, papers that come in and say, oh, I think that would be great to get all the 6 kids together. Maybe we should go. And so that's one thing. And then routines help diffuse stress. Kids need routines. And I don't mean let's all sit down and look at our iPads. I don't mean that. That's not what I'm saying at all. I mean, put the iPads down and go outside in nature. Let's go for a walk, go to a park. Let's go donate our time. Let's go do something positive for our community, whether it's your synagogue, your church, your community center, the homeless. People in need in your community need you. And when you teach that to kids and grandkids, I think that right there helps diffuse stress, because once again, you're not sitting in front of a TV, you're not sitting in front of a device, but you're together as a bond, as a unit, family unit, are going out into the world, and you're not foraging, but you are making a difference in the world. And so this gives you time together. Another one is to play games,
Mm.
So I mentioned in that article, Monopoly, I love Monopoly. And I was on a Zoom yesterday, a business Zoom, and they were asking questions. What Clue figure would you like to be? And I was like, well, I didn't play Clue much. And most of the people on the Zoom, they weren't Cluers, but I played Monopoly and I always was the horse, right? Well, of
Well, of
course I was
course.
the horse. And this is when I was a kid. I didn't even know I was going to be a jockey, but I just always loved horses. So you gather around the board, whatever board that is, or whatever game. Some people like Trouble. Some people like battlegrounds, where you drop that thing in the those ships. But find a board game or find a card game that you like to just sit down and play. And when my kids are up there at the dining room table, my grandkids playing, I always want to give them food, like carrot sticks or celery sticks or whatever. So they keep eating. Kids always have to eat. And I'll be cooking inside, and they're having fun, but they are cementing their memories that they could take 20 years from then and remembering, oh yeah, I remember we played Monopoly at Gma's house, right? Yep. And also another thing I thought of was a recipe roundup. This is kind of fun. So you could ask everyone in your family, whether it's 5, 10, or 20 or 40, everybody bring one index card of your favorite recipe. I call it a recipe roundup. And then you just put them on the table. Somebody that's really good at this, it wouldn't be me, is you take pictures of them, probably 4 on a page of an 8.5 by 11. So
Mhm.
you have, or 8. And then you take a picture of it, and then it could be a PDF file, or it could be a frame to give to someone, or whatever. Then you have one page of all your really good family recipes. And like, I have a index card box of my mom's family recipes, and in her handwriting, Will. And so the most important part is it's her handwriting. And then my mother-in-law from Iowa, she would give me recipes like ham balls from Iowa, unbelievably delicious ham balls, and it's in her handwriting. So I took them around, I think it was last year, Lance's birthday, July 4th. I said, here's my box, and I took them all and laid them out, and I sent them to my son. I said, these are your grandmother's recipes from my box. And my brothers, when we were kids growing up, we got older, he goes, I can't believe mom only gave you 2 girls, not us 3 boys, her recipe box. I said, it's kind of sexist. Yes, it was. But, and my brothers were all great cooks. They really are. But they formulated their own recipes. They didn't really need my mom's in the end.
It's funny, all the things you just said, I mirrored every single one of them. So, growing up, my daughter, um, was involved in charity work because as a biker, we do it all the time. So she would come with the club and go to Wreaths Across America, which is coming up soon, and put a wreath at the national cemeteries. She would, we would play games. We'd have a game night, Uno, or
Yes.
Monopoly was kind of long for us, and we're way too competitive. Um,
Right.
but we'd have a whole bunch of games we always played. We have a box of recipes from my wife's mom in her handwriting,
Uh-huh.
and from her grandmother in her grandmother's handwriting.
Wow.
So we're putting those all together. So you're right; those are great family traditions
Uh,
that and it's a fun thing. It makes a family more cohesive. And my belief is the more cohesive and more shared experiences you have with your family, the less stress and anxiety coming from that stress happens.
And the most important thing is about connection. And it's
Yeah,
about not allowing any loneliness to come into the equation of families because you might have someone in your family that lives alone or sister, brother, whatever. And you just might wonder, like, how are they doing? Are they connected to anyone? Do they go out? Besides family, do they go out and do things in the community? And
right.
loneliness is just so huge in the world nowadays. Well,
It is.
I wrote about that last year. And, for our Surgeon General to talk about it and to really have conversations about it. And in Japan, they have a minister of loneliness. So it's an important topic
I
as
was
well.
I was actually going to mention in Japan that they have the government is actually involved. It's such a problem. I forgot the Japanese word for it, where people who are locked in their homes all the time, whether they're done working or they go to work and come home, and that they actually there's a service when you can like rent a friend, and they'll just go for walks with you. It's
Yes.
um, you mentioned something that's important, and that's like keeping tabs on people in your family and their loneliness and the stress that they're going through. Is it important for family members to actually participate actively in these traditions and to make them, will that make them more effective in reducing the stress? Or is it just being there enough? In other words, when you have a big family get together, you always have some of the alpha members of the family who are doing the cooking and doing the talking and drinking, and the guys are off doing their stuff. And but there are people that are just there. My mother-in-law is one of 12. So when we get together with their family and their all of their kids and their kids now, because I'm old, um, it's a lot of people. And I do notice, because it's kind of what I do. I do notice people sitting off in the corners, just being
Mhm,
there. Is
mhm.
that good enough?
Well, it's good to be around. It's good for them to see and to be part of the energy of seeing connections because it's all about connection. And what I would suggest doing is, in the midst of all that, employ touch. As a massage therapist, I'm all about touch. So
Right.
go over to that auntie from New Jersey you haven't seen in decades. Say, hold her hand. So, or put your hand on top of her hand and say, so, how's it going? Tell me what went on this past year. How's everything going? Is to draw her in to have, so you have curiosity, not condemnation about the fact that whatever, she didn't move away from here to go there to be around whatever. So I think curiosity, not condemnation, is important so that you make that connection in safety, in love, and in true joy because you want to bring this person in. And so, what I learned in family is that there are introverts and there are extroverts. I'm a very, very extroverted person. So is everyone in my family that I brought to the world, my son, my daughter. My husband and his two sons, they're very introverted. So it taught me a lesson in that when we do all get together, they might not like that loudness that, we're Filipino, although we're just as loud as Italians too, and we're very loud. And some people are kind of offended by that, and it's overkill. But we're
Right.
having fun. This is what we do. We have fun. So if that bothers you, then people would walk out to the porch or sit outside somewhere where it's a little less boisterous, if you will. But either which way, we do meet around the table and we do have fun eating. And then, of course, there's, dessert, there's cleanup. There's so much fun in cleanup, right? Whoever does that.
Well, but I think you're right. I think um, people can just show up and just be
Mhm.
there and soak it all in.
Right.
And it can, for them, not everyone's the same, but for them, it can be very relaxing.
And that's
I've
okay.
been accused of being an extrovert myself.
Yeah,
I'm just saying.
I
So,
know. It's hard. It's very hard.
but I go around and it's funny because and what's really important, what you said, is the mixing of families.
Hmm.
Cultures are different. My wife's family's culture was very different than mine. When they first met me, who the hell is this guy hugging me?
Yeah.
I grew up, that's what we do. Like Italians, I grew up with Italians and Jews, and we all hugged and kissed. And they're from the Midwest. It's a little different. They got used to it. So, I think that everyone just being part of whatever that tradition is, that traditional get together is, you don't always have to be the person who is out there like Linda and I,
Hmm.
talking to everyone. You
Hmm.
can just be there and be yourself. And it's very, very good for you to relieve that stress and to be around your family. I wanted to ask you something else, and that's about balance, because balance,
Right.
we're kind of talking about it, but around it. You know, how do you maintain balance? In a family tradition, while you want to be part of it, but you want to make sure that it's also not causing stress. It's not a source of
Right.
stress for people. In other words, you go to someone's house for Thanksgiving or for New Year's or something like that. I promise someone is stressed out
Right.
because
Right.
of they're the one that's either putting it on or whatever. I don't know, the meeting of different kinds of people are going to be there and stuff like that. How do we balance that within a tradition? Is there a way?
Well, one of the ways I was thinking was to honor and ask each family member what works for you. Ask them. Don't make them or tell them. Just say, so, hey, this year or next year, I would love to gather and do blah, 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 whatever that is for you. So I am kind of like the person that begins thinking about things in my family. And I kind of like make things happen because that's just what I do. I think genetically my mom sent it down to me. And so I think that would be good. And then also knowing what your communication styles are for your family members. Does everyone love email, text, phone calls? It's kind of hard to find everybody on the phone. So I personally like to email my kids and then I'll follow it up a couple days later. Hey, did you see my email? Without that would add stress to people if you just kept hammering them about that or calling them 5 times. I do not want to add to someone's stress. So know your kids and know your family and know what works for them in terms of, gosh, she has such a busy work life or her kids are, driving her crazy. So I won't add to that stress. And the other thing is, this is some great research from Pew
Hmm.
Research that I mentioned in one of my articles. And so they did research on a whole bunch of countries, United States, Canada, Europe, 16 countries. And what they did is they asked, well, what makes life meaningful? And guess what the answer was?
I
Family.
Family, sure,
Family. 15 out of 17 is family.
yeah.
And so when you think about that, these are researchers that really ask the tough question. And so when countries all over Europe and us, and we were asked that, that's an important reminder to us that we do have to continually be intentional about this. The other thing that I want to mention too that I looked up is here in Maryland, we have visitmaryland.org. If during the fall here you want to go to the mountains or you want to go to Easton or Annapolis or the Eastern Shore to enjoy all the fall festivals. But nationally, for all the listeners that are from all over our country and maybe even the world, there is a one called inyourstate.com. And so that's an important website where you could put in your state and they will design your own personal travel itinerary. If you just have like 5 hour time, or if you have one day, or if you have a 2 hour block from where you live and your zip code, they tell you where you could go at that moment in time or wherever. So I think that's a great way for people that are the Energizer bunnies in their family to look ahead to organize and orchestrate something is you could say, hey, look at this. There's going to be this great concert. There's going to be this great festival. Let's all get together. But you also have to kind of put it out there, if you will, you know?
That's great advice. And you know what? You doing that, because I'm the guy that likes to go.
Mm-hmm. Me
I
too.
don't always like to organize it,
Right.
because I did it for so long
Right.
for different organizations and at home and stuff. So it,
Right.
it's when you say to your family, and folks, just because we're saying family does not mean we're not including friends. Friends become family.
Right.
They're just family by choice, not
Right.
born into it. But you being able to do that for your family is
Mm,
such in itself such a stress reliever.
yeah.
I know that when my wife comes to me and says, "Hey, we're going away for the weekend. We're going
Mhm.
here," I'm so happy. Like,
Mhm.
I'm happy we're going away. I'm happy we're going to hang out with her, and I'm happy I don't have to do it.
Right.
So
Right.
if you have somebody in the family who's doing that, say thank you. Thank you,
Absolutely.
Linda. Thank you, Mom. Thank you for doing that. I really enjoyed it, and I loved the time that we're together. Those are really important things.
Here's
Um,
an example, Will, of my cousin putting a spreadsheet together for our family reunion. When our cousin was in the Special Olympics in Florida 2 years ago, and she said in her mind, let's all have a family reunion. Hawaii, Canada, everybody comes over to the East Coast, and we'll meet at Linda's, and we'll make it work. So we did that because Lisa was in the Special Olympics in Florida, and then we did Washington. I was in charge of Washington. Pam was in charge of putting the spreadsheet together. That's not good for me to do, as I don't know how to do that. But I organized Washington trip, a bus tour here in Washington, and then my sister organized the Circle Line cruise around Manhattan. So we ate pizza, we had New York time with our relatives, we had pool time here, and then we had Washington time, and that was our family reunion. And that was actually so much fun because it encompassed many states, but it also allowed them, especially Hawaiian people, to see so much here on the East Coast. And that made us all feel so good.
I'll bet. I mean, I could just listening to you talk about it. I think, wow, what a great idea. The other thing, and we sort of like touched on it a little bit. I wanted to talk about because things change generation to generation, and I think we have to also change our family traditions. And I wanted to ask you, what can we do to be more inclusive of our younger generation? My daughter is now 25. God, I can't believe I said that. And we have older members in the family, even older than me. And how do we deal with that stress of trying to be inclusive in our either in our holiday traditions or our family traditions and getting together that so that everyone not only feels included but is enjoying it, and it is a good stress reliever for them as well.
Um, a few things that I thought of was to tell stories, is to share stories for the elders, the elders, the generational elders to share stories if they can remember them. And for the younger folks, the younger kids, my grandkids are 11 down to 5, they could ask me or Gigi, when my mom was alive, ask her questions. The other thing is to have photo albums around. Well, that's really important because if they're around, they're not always around, but when you do have family gatherings, let them happen to be around because that is a way to just open a book and it's a storybook of your family's life, of seeing what I looked like when I was 5, oh my Lord, and then seeing what other people look like from decades ago, and kids, or even look at our, wedding album, things like that, or look at what the kids looked like when they were babies. So I think generational questions are an important thing. Photos are important, memories are important. Like as a jockey, I have my win, it's called win photo, and I have a whole album of it, but there's a lot of them, but in an album, I have them up there. Sometimes I like to show them to the kids, not that they really, really, really care a lot about it, but sometimes they do. But anyway, I show them this is what Gmail looked like on a horse, but other people really like it. And it's nice for me to look at that I thank God I'm alive and that wow, that was a long time ago. But then I'm still here is the gift after all that.
I think that's absolutely true. I was just talking, I just had interviewed Josh Briley, is a psychologist, and he said that sense we all need, especially men, need that sense of belonging to
Mhm.
something. And I remember doing something about what sort of like what you did, showing photos and showing to my daughter. And you know what really makes the connection? When you're looking at a photo of your grandmother, Linda, and you look just like her at the same age.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I used to have a picture up of my daughter at 18 months and my wife at 18 months, and they look like twins. Nothing brings home that you're a family more than that. So I think that's a real gives you a real sense of belonging, and that in itself is a I don't know, it's a great feeling. And when you're
It
doing those
is.
holiday and family traditions, and guys, if you're telling stories to your kids, so what if you told them before? Tell them again. It's okay. God knows my family's heard mine a few times.
That
All right.
reminds me that Dan Buettner from his Blue Zones book,
Uh,
he said from all of the elder people that make it to over 100, he traveled all over the world. And the top 3 things are all heart connections. Number 1 is belong to a faith-based group. Number 2 is love your family first. Put your family first and take care of them. That's an important thing. Number 3 is the right tribe. Find your right tribe. And your tribe is create a MOAIS. It's MOAIS, just like American Institute of Stress, MOAIS. And that's in the Okinawans say that to have a circle of 5 people that are committed to you in your life. Even if you're 100, you're 80, you're 90, but it's almost like being married to your friends and there's a commitment. And that's what keeps people living is belonging, putting family first, and this gathering of 5 key people
and
to
you're
help you live long.
and if you're listening to this and you're saying you're in a situation where you don't have the traditional kinds of family, make your own family.
Mhm.
I have a lot of guys I call brother
Yeah,
because they are,
yeah,
and you share your life with these people. They are your family in a
yeah.
lot of ways. Certainly, if your blood relatives are there
Right,
too.
right,
Some
right,
of them
right,
you even like.
right.
Um, but sharing your life with your kids is such an enjoyable thing. It's such a joy in your life that when you're going through all the stress of the upcoming holidays and you're standing there and you're thinking, oh my God, I got to make this dish and you know and this and I got to cook this and clean this and do this. Remember what it's really for. It's really for because you're all getting together and sharing your lives together in a time of happiness and as Linda brings up, in a time where you can instill hope. And I wanted to ask you um, one more time about that because a lot of times, there is uncertainty or crisis in your family and things like that. It comes up. It just does. It's not an easy road to go down. Can we utilize families' traditions to instill that sense of hope even during those times of crisis?
Absolutely, because everyone needs to be reminded they're loved, Will. Through a crisis, through a joyful thing, through a funeral, through a wedding, through a party, regardless. Everyone needs to be reminded they are loved. And that's an important component. And so what I offer everyone here is that to begin this tradition that somebody told me decades and decades ago, before they hang up the phone, they say, I love you. Sometimes you say love you. Even in an email, I put LOVU, LOV, or sometimes I say LOVUS, love yous, if it's a couple of people. But before I say goodbye to my grandkids, I hug them and I say love you. And guess what happens? My little Ava, my little Olivia, all my grandkids, guess what they do now? Love you.
Yeah.
They say that all the time when they hug you and say goodbye. Love you, love you. And so you pass that down because you really are passing down that thread of love. That's the connection that's generationally been passed down to you. And when we're all gone, what is left is our kids passing down what we passed on to them in the end. And in the end, it's all about love, is to pass that on, regardless of what we all went through. We made it through the pandemic. How hard was that? Very, very hard. And what did we learn? We learned a lot, right?
Yep.
We learned a lot about connections, mindfulness, being present with people, going out in nature. I can't stress that enough. And just coming together in love. That's the most important thing we could do.
And that'll overcome or certainly help us through just about any crisis. Because
Absolutely.
the most crises that happen certainly are not by choice, and a lot of them we have no control over. It's funny you talk about the tradition of hugging and saying I love you. In my club, my motorcycle club, we have a tradition that is different than most motorcycle clubs. We will not end a ride unless we stop, get off our bikes, everybody hugs everyone, sometimes say I love you, brother, and
Oh, that's
I'll
great.
see you next week. We That has been a tradition for 12 years. I won't let them not do it. Sometimes and sometimes for some of the people, that's the only time they've had a physical connection that whole week until next week's ride. For some people, they're going through a lot of crisis, and knowing that they're loved and hugged by their brothers help them get through that. Now, sometimes it's a bad thing because it has happened that some of those guys have had the flu.
Oh,
They got a call 4 days later saying, anyway, but you're right. It's sharing that love with people, and that'll more than anything else. And that tradition of doing just
right,
that will help the people through a crisis and their stress. All right,
right.
we're coming kind of at the end of our time limit here, but I got to ask you your last question. I think I know the answer, but I'm going to ask you
Yeah.
anyway. I ask everybody, and I want to know what Linda Penkala does when she's stressed out and she's having a stressful day. What do you do to help manage your stress?
Well, I cultivate breathing with intention. There's so many breathing tools out there. Last time I was on your podcast, I taught vagus nerve breathing.
Mm-hmm.
Today, I would offer 358 breathing. Just inhale 3, hold 5, exhale 8. You could practice box breathing. You could Google that. And there's also alternate nostril breathing, which is really good too. It's an Indian form of breathing, and that's awesome. But the beauty of it in the Harvard Business Review is there's research on how your breathing patterns change your emotions. So when we're angry, upset, or pissed off in traffic, whatever, so we really have shallow, really, really quick breathing. When we're in
Yeah.
joy and love and compassion and peace, we have really calm, long, deep breaths that totally are different than when we're upset. So conversely, we can control how our emotions are through our breath. And so that's a gift because, in the end, you don't have to spend money. And I posted this up on LinkedIn for everyone. You could go to my LinkedIn, Linda Pankala, and find this article. in the Harvard Business Review about just why is it so important to breathe. And it's so simple. It's free. You don't have to go anywhere, and it's always with you, Will.
You know what? That's a very common answer. And it also is one of my answers when I'm asked that question. I've learned box breathing and a few other
Yeah.
ways of doing it.
Yeah.
And it really is, you're right, it's always with you. You don't need any tools, and it's a great thing. I was taught something that was very helpful. Breathe like a baby. And I went, what the hell does that mean? I said, watch a baby breathe. Their stomach goes all the way out, and their stomach goes
Right.
all the way in, and their
Right.
stomach goes all the way out.
Right.
And watch an adult who's stressed out
Right.
breathe. His shoulders go up and shoulders go down. It's very
Yeah.
different. So the
They're up
physiology,
here, right?
right? And
Yeah.
so that's a great answer. Thank you, Linda. I certainly loved your article. I want everybody to read it. It's just in Contentment magazine. Go to stress.org and read it. Thank you for taking the time to talk to me today, and all you do for AIS, all your contributions. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Will. It was great to be with you. Take
And
care.
that's going to do it for us today. This has been your host, Will Heckman. I want to thank you all for joining us once again. Don't forget, please follow this podcast, subscribe, and make sure you go to stress.org and think about becoming a member. And I want to remind you, just as stress is different for each of us, there is no one stress reduction or management strategy that's right for everyone. So make sure you join us next time as we explore more stress management strategies and insights. Good day, everyone.